Om Namo Narayanaaya. Om Namo Narayanaaya. Hello, devotees of Chicago Kalibari. Our veteran, Mr. Subramaniam and his wife Vidya, they're going to give the continuing talk on the essentials of Sanatana Dharma. This is session 3 of a series of lectures to take place on Sanatana Dharma. Mr. Subramaniam's name is a household name here in Chicago and worldwide. He is an environmental engineer and a consultant. And a lot of his time he devotes on, Sanatana Dharma and research on Hinduism and giving lectures, talks, and then presentations. And Vidya is also a very devoted individual. She is involved in a lot of bhajan singing here in Chicago and also in other places. With that introduction, let me hand over the mic to Mr. Subramaniam. Thank you.
Thank you, Sampradaya. Thank you and namaste to everyone. Welcome to this session 3 of the Essentials of Sanatana Dharma. As usual, we'll start with our prayers. Om Gajananam Bhota Ganati Sevitam Kavita Jambu Balasara Pakshitam Uma Sutam Soka Vinasa Karanam Namami Vigneshwara Pada Pankajam Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Shiva Samarambam Sankaracharya Madhyamam Asmat Acharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Om Sri 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 Shantananda Avatuta Sadgurave Namaha. It's a very exhaustive subject, Sanatana Dharma, and what we are providing right now is an overview of the essentials. I'd like to review the last session before we move on to the details of this session. In the last session, number 2, we learned some of the fundamental concepts of Sanatana Dharma, also called Hinduism. As I mentioned, Hinduism believes in Brahman, the Supreme or the Almighty, also called Paramatma. Param is superlative, it's the highest Atma. And it also believes that every creature is divine as Jivatma. We are all tiny specks of that overall Paramatma. And Hinduism focuses on individual growth and self-realization. It's not external, but internal. One has to grow from within. And once you start growing within, you achieve peace and happiness by the ways shown in Sanatana Dharma. Basically, I mentioned there are 4 parts by which we ultimately achieve that salvation. The first being knowledge. Second is discipline, discipline of the mind as well as the body. Third, the development of a character, which is most important. It follows certain principles laid down in Sanatana Dharma. And finally, self-introspection or thinking within, who am I? So this is the overview of the last session. Let's see what we want to cover in this session. In this session, I'm going to focus on the first part I mentioned about knowledge. and it is about the Vedas, which are a storehouse of knowledge. I mentioned to you that Veda comes from the Sanskrit root with, to know. So really speaking, Vedas mean knowledge. It is a gigantic storehouse of knowledge. And Vedanta, the end of the Vedanta, is called the end of knowledge. So the entire Sanatana Dharma, ancient traditions and philosophy for Hinduism are all based on the holy Vedas. As I mentioned before, the Vedas have no single author, and therefore they are called apaurushia. Without a human having created, it's also known as anadi. So it is something which is different from other religions where the holy book was founded by somebody, the religion was known after the name, but here it's not so. It is something which was heard. So people can ask the question, how did the Vedas come? It's believed that the ancient rishis really heard them through the ether, experienced them, and therefore it is called Shruti. Shruti is what is heard. And they, after hearing it, based on what they heard, they made mental notes, and then the Vedas were then transmitted by way of mouth, orally, to the disciples over centuries through what is known as the Gurukula system. And the Guru used to have the Sishyas or disciples before him, and he will speak out, and the Sishyas in turn will learn it. So the Vedas were then memorized by them and transmitted again to the next generation. And as they were recovered from the memory, it is called Smriti. Smriti is what was remembered. Shruti is what was heard, and Smriti was what was remembered. So the code of conduct and behavior for the people, or dharma, was developed by the rishis then based on the Vedas. So the word rishi itself means mantra drishta, one who discovered, or one who saw, and not mantra karta, not the creator who created the mantra. So our life is dependent on our breathing functions. In the same way, the cosmos function in accordance with certain vibrations of the Vedic sounds. So the Vedic mantras are the very breath of the Supreme Being. We must therefore conclude that without the Vedas, there is no Brahman or God or Supreme. To put it in a different way, the Vedas are self-existent, just like the Paramatman. They're independent. In fact, there was a section of people who said, we don't need a God, we just only need Vedas, Mimamsas. So this Veda was a very large one, and then it is pregnant with a lot of meaning, and it represents the philosophy of only one truth. They confer blessings on the form of deities. So it is the duty of Hindus to understand at least the basics of Vedas. I'm going to tell you the divisions of Vedas, and it was Rishi Vyas who compiled the four Vedas. It has 6 arms, what they call angas, and 4 upangas, subsections. It covers a variety of philosophies and rituals. So who really compiled this? We'd like to know. It was a great Rishi. You know, at the end of Dwapara Yuga, the previous Yuga to us, the end of the yuga was imminent and Lord Krishna was there. So the sages at that time went and asked him, what will happen to the Vedas in the next Kali Yuga? The Vedas are a large treatise, and who will protect them? And it appears that Lord Krishna answered them, don't worry, there will be someone born with my name, and he will be the one who will protect the Vedas. And true enough, there was a baby born to a fisherwoman, a black colored baby, therefore it was called Krishna. And since it was born in an island, it was called Dvaipayana, Dvipam and Dvaipayana. So he was named Krishna Dvaipayana. Now, Krishna Dvaipayana was very, very intelligent at a very young age. He showed his intelligence through very active study, and he was the one who was responsible for classifying the Vedas into 4 parts. There is a truth here that the person Veda Vyas was born to a fisherwoman. It proves that class or caste is not playing a part. It did not play any part in even compiling the great Vedas. So you must imagine at that time, the Vedas being compiled by a person who was born in an island. He was not an educated Brahmin or somebody from a higher caste. So this proves that caste is not a distinction. So he developed the Vedas into 4 parts, classified them. He didn't create them, but he classified them. The reason being that all the Vedas cannot be studied in one single human life because they are very large. So probably King, the sage wise Vedavyas thought it is better to divide them in 4 at least, so one can be studied. And with that in mind, he classified them into 4 Vedas called Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, and Adana Veda. So these 4 Vedas called Chatur Vedas were then handed over by Veda Vyas to his 4 disciples, Sumanta, Baila, Jaimini, and Vaishampayana, respectively, Rig, Yajur, and Sama, Adana Veda, and they in turn passed it on to the next generation. So there is a lot of Vedic literature, a very gigantic completion of text generated by many sages that is forming the fertile ground from which have sprouted the different systems of Indian philosophy. Sage Veda Vyas is also credited with creating many other works. He is the author of Vedanta Shastras and the great Puranas, 18 great Puranas, and above all, the great epic of Mahabharata. It's also sometimes called the 5th Veda. So here is Rishi Veda Vyas, who was the father of present-day 4 Vedas. And then he created them, compiled them together, and then he also made other epics like Mahabharata and the Puranas. So Veda is called Veda Mata. She is the mother, and she is represented by goddess Gayatri. Gayatri is Veda Mata. Gayatri is a very important mantra, and Gayatri is a manifestation of goddess Saraswati, the spouse of Brahma, and she is regarded as Veda Mata. So the mother of all Vedas. I'd like to request my Dharma Patni Vidya Subramaniam to sing a small bhajan on Veda Mata.
शारदे शिव शारदे वेदमाता शारदे शारदे शिव शारदे वेदमाता शारदे शारदे शिव शारदे विद्यादायिनी शारदे शारदे शिव शारदे विद्यादायिनी शारदे शारदे शिव शारदे वाग्विलासिनी शारदे शारदे शिव शारदे वाग्विलासिनी शारदे शारदे शिव शारदे वेदमाता शारदे शारदे शिव शारदे वेदमाता शारदे शारदे शारदे
Mata ki Jai. It's a beautiful song praising Veda Mata. So now, going further, there are 4 key Vedas I mentioned: Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, Atharvana Veda. Now, what is the main purpose of these Vedas? One, Rig Veda has over 1,000 hymns, which are covered in 10 chapters. In fact, 1028 Vedic Sanskrit hymns and 10,600 verses, totally distributed over 10 what are called mandalas. Now, these are specifically praising the various deities. The Rig Veda is very systematically structured, and it is based on very clear principles. The Veda begins with prayers to Agni, the god of fire, and Indra, the king of the Devas. So that is the coverage of Rig Veda. Yajur Veda is actually I would say a priestly handbook, which priests use for use in the performance of various rituals and Vedic sacrifices. It is actually in 2 sections. One is called the Krishna Yajur Veda, and the other one is called the Shukla Yajur Veda. You can say black and white. There are 2 subdivisions in the Yajur Veda. The Shukla Yajur Veda came later. But this is commonly used in all the Agni Homams and Abhishekams and various rituals. So they contain all the mantras required for carrying out these rituals. The third one, called the Sama Veda, it is musical. It's got many musical chants and melodies which are sung during worship and also during the performance of yajnas. So this music, Sama, Ghana as they call it, is actually makes the deities very happy. They get pleased with it. The story goes that Ravana used to please Shiva with his Samaganam. And Samagana is sung at many of these functions, and they are all very melodious. So I'd like to ask Vidya to sing a song on the glory of Samagana.
Samagana priye Samagana priye Amba Samagana priye Amba Samagana priye Amba Sarvaloka Nayakiye Amba Samagana priye Amba सर्वलोकनायकिये अम्ब सामगान प्रिये वामदेवर्महिळ सुन्दरी वामदेवर्महिळ सुन्दरी वामदेवर्महिळ सुन्दरी वामदेवर्महिळ सुन्दरी शङ्करी वामदेवर्महिळ सुन्दरी शङ्करी श्यामळाङ्गी आनंद भैरवी श्यामळांगी आनंद भैरवी सामगान प्रिये अम्ब सर्वलोकनायकिये अम्ब सामगान प्रिये आदिकारणी पराशक्ति श्री अखिलांडेश्वरी धर्म संवर्धनी आदिकारणी पराशक्ति श्री अखिलांडेश्वरी धर्म संवर्धनी ओदुमामरे गौरी ओदुमामरे गौरी ओदुमामरे गौरी ओदुमामरे गौरी ओंकारी ओदु मामरे गौरी ओंकारी उनदडिये चरणं संततम् उनदडिये चरणं संततम् उनदडिये चरणं सततं सामगान प्रिये सर्वलोकनायकिये अम्ब सामगान प्रिये आदिपराशक्ति की जय।
This is a very melodious song set in the raga Ananda Bhairavi. Anandam itself is happiness. So it is set in that melodious raga of Ananda Bhairavi. And it makes a reference to Vedas in this song in Tamil called Marai. Marai means to hide. In Tamil, Vedam is called Marai. What is Marai? It's hidden. The secrets of Vedas are hidden, therefore it is called Marai. So it is not only a melodious music sung in praise of Devi, the Divine Mother, it also make a reference to the Vedas in it, Marai. So they are twofold. One is the Samagana itself is so pleasing to the deities, and it also makes a reference to the Vedas in this. So I chose this song to explain the beauty of Samagana. And lastly, of course, the Atharvana Veda, which is there, it is mostly concerning spells and charms and magical formula, mostly beyond the scope of Homam or Yajna. So the other three are concerned with this. So this is the fourth one. But all these have very, very large contents and very exhaustive. So it's very difficult to speak on the Vedas because the magnitude of Vedas is such that It is so large, and it is such is its glory. The Vedas are indeed the sources of Dharma as the authority on which they're founded. There is a word called Vedavak, that means the word of the Vedas, that is considered as very sacred. If somebody says something, they can ask a question, is it really Vedavak? Is it so sacred that you must keep it? So this Vedavak, or the word of the Vedas, has become very sacred and a kind of inviolable law for the thousands and thousands of years. So let's see more on what these Vedas contain, the Vedas contents. Now, Vedic contents, you can classify them in different forms. I've just given you a framework of them. First one is the Samhita, as it's called. Samhita, it consists of all the Vedic mantras. It is a most ancient part of Vedas, which is consisting of Veda mantras. The other one is the Brahmana. Brahmana are rituals and prayers to guide the priests, particularly in their duties. So they take the guidance from Samhitas. The third one is called the Aranyaka. The Aranyakas are training methodologies. They train the mind for higher attainment in life. They concern worship and meditation and those kind of things. And fourthly, the Upanishads. Upanishad means Upa is near, Shad is to sit. Sit near the Guru, Upanishads. And they sat near the Guru and learned many things. So it's called the Upanishads. Actually, there are 108 Upanishads, but only 11 of them are very, very prominent and known. So they are considerably smaller than the Samhitas, mostly dealing with matters of the soul and more philosophical and sometimes difficult to understand. So that forms the Upanishads. So only the mature mind can really absorb them. And then it has the 6 main arms, what are called Angas. 6 Angas. Anga itself means a bhagam, a part of the body. And these are the parts of Vedamata. It's called Siksha, Chanda, Vyakarana, Nirukta, Jyotisha, and Kalpa. I'm not explaining the details of this, but I just want to tell you right now that this has got 6 main arms, what are called Siksha, Chanda, Vyakarana, Nirukta, Jyotisha, and Kalpa. And they have subdivisions called Upangas, which support the Angas. And there are 4 of them called Mimamsa, Nyaya, Purana, and Dharma Shastra. So you have 4 main Vedas, 6 Angas, and 4 Upangas. So that makes it 6 plus 4, 10 plus 4, 14 of them. So you have the very large content in Vedas, and there are many what they call shakhas or branches, and they were developed from the Vedic tradition, but largely they shaped the Hinduism knowledge, philosophy over many years. And of the 4 Vedas, only some 1,000 branches are yet known to us. So this is an overview of what the Vedas contain. The next question arises, which is very commonly asked by many people today, and that is, why Vedas? Why should we bother about Vedas and philosophy? Today, our modern life is focused primarily on material issues, meaning money and science. So it's natural for people, vast majority of them, to ask, when science is providing all the answers to us, what benefit is coming from Vedas and philosophy? In fact, the Vedas seem very dry and philosophical. In Tamil, they call it as Varattu Vedantam, Varattu means dry. So it's a very dry subject. Why should we really go and learn about Vedas? But if you look seriously, people ask questions related to many aspects of our existence. Even though the focus is on making a living and material enjoyment, there are many people who ask, from where did we come? What happens after death? And what should we do for spiritual elevation? Many questions come. So in a sense, the basic heart, everyone is a philosopher. So we dwell into philosophy whenever we can, but the pressures of work are there, society, formal education, entertaining, meeting people, and all that leaves us very little time to contemplate really about philosophical issues. But Vedas actually provide many answers. This is a very delightful pursuit of answers to many questions of our existence and millions of its facets, because the questions are even more important than the answers. The Vedas encourage you to ask questions. Today, science and technology virtually rule our lives, providing us the means to material progress and economic progress. But we seem to forget that the philosophy provides us the soul, the emotional gain, and the conscience to experience that progress in a meaningful way. And it's very important to remember that most scientific answers started off as philosophical questions. Like, for example, Newton looked at an apple falling down from a tree, and he wondered why the apple fell down, why did it not go up? Then came the scientific discovery of Newton's laws. Graham Bell, he thought, why can't I transmit sound as waves? And the phone was born. It was the thinking, the question asked, why not? Why didn't we convert the sound waves into something which can be transmitted? Likewise, Edison, one of the greatest inventors, he worked on light from unseen electricity. Why can't it glow? So if you read the histories of these people, you will find there is philosophy actually at the root, the forefront of our seeking. And science provides us the answers, and philosophy, the questions basically. So science will tell us how to live and even how to kill, but it can never tell us the purpose of life nor why to live or kill. So the Vedas, they cover extensive fields of knowledge, both material as well as spiritual. The questions and answers about life and living and pursuing Vedas is what enriched individuals from ancient times. The quality of life, the quality of organizations, the quality of communities and societies. So the material world without philosophy is like a bird with just one wing. It can eat and probably grow fat, but it can never fly. It may give the impression that it is doing well, but it will never be able to fly. So schools and many places of education, they are driven purely by economics and science and economic progress, but they just don't have the time to delve into basic questions which Vedas do. So the pursuit of Vedas provides clarity on life. It provides answers to many questions and the purpose of life. It helps to improve personal values and effectiveness at work too, because once your mind is at peace, then you are a lot more effective at work and at home, and also interrelating to other people, communications, everything becomes a lot more effective. So that's the reason why I think Vedas should be taught and people should ask questions. Let's go a little further on sounds and vibrations. Now, the mantras, they are the life breath of Vedas. And what is the life breath? It is actually giving life to Vedas, the mantras. But what is the life breath of mantras themselves? That's the sound. You see here a set of musical instruments. When somebody plays these musical instruments in a melodious way, then you respond very well. You nod your head and we enjoy the music, isn't it? So we respond to the vibrations caused by the music. The sound comes from the vibrations. You see the strings, when they put the strings together and like a guitar and you vibrate it with the finger, it produces sound. So long as it's played well, you love it. Just imagine you hear the dog barking, or you have a lightning sound, or you have a tractor moving across. You don't respond so well. You call it noise. You don't call it music. So the condition of the mind is related to the type of sound and the vibrations that are caused. So Vedas should be chanted in such a way that the sound which come from proper intonation of mantras, they create cheers in your body through the nadis. And the Veda should be chanted with absolute clarity on swaras, just like music. You have Sarigama Padanisa, you have Doroma Fasolati in Western music. They should be played in such a way that it is pleasing. But if a bad artist plays, then you don't like it. So similarly in Vedas, the mantras, they produce vibrations, and if they are produced with the correct intonation, they provide beneficial impacts on creatures. So the swaram is the most important in Vedas. And the swaram, if you see Vedic mantras, which are now available in book forms too, you have different signs to denote when to pronounce a mantra uniformly, when to pronounce it slightly with higher pitch, with still higher pitch, and with lower pitch. So they got names for that. Udatta. Udatta is normal. There is no mark in the books too when you pronounce it at uniform level. Anudatta is slightly lowering. So you'll find a small hyphen-like thing underlining below the letter. And you have Swarita. Swaram comes Swarita. Swarita means slightly raised pitch, where you have one apostrophe-like mark above the letter. And then there is also Dirgha Swarita, which means you have to raise it still further. And it gives you two marks, two kind of apostrophes above the letter, which tells you have to raise that. So I'd like to demonstrate it with a very well-known verse in Rig Veda, which usually starts off with Ganapati. Om Gananatva Ganapati Havamahe Kavim Kavidam Omastravastavam Jeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspata Anasranvan Odivi Sida Sadhanam Om Mahaganapataye Namaha. You see the swaras go up and down, and you'll find throughout Vedas the mantras have this up and down, which creates ripples in your body. And without really resorting to any writing in those days, our ancestors evolved methods of learning Vedas to include chanting, practicing, memorizing, and continuing the process from one generation to another generation. This was done to make sure that there could be some error creeping somewhere in even a single letter, in its pronunciation, which should not. And the Guru will correct it immediately, because you should not upset the impact caused by those mantras. So there are various methods of chanting these mantras. They're all progressive ascending order of efficacy. They have different names like Vakyam, Padam, Kramam, Jata, Mala, Shikha, Reka, Dvajam, Dandam, Ratham, and Ghanam. You must have heard the expression Ghana particle, one who is expert in Ghanam. It's a method of reciting the Vedas, quite a complex one. I can explain it later on sometime. And such people who are experts in the Ghanam are called Ghana particle. These are the people who have mastered the way of reciting, and they do it in many of these functions, yajnams. You can listen to that. But why is it that the sound of Vedas is given so much of importance in Vedas? After all, what is sound? Modern science says it's vibrations, caused vibration. Whenever there is vibration, there is sound. Conversely, to produce the sound, the vibration corresponding to it must also be created. It is actually a very rational way, and you can consider human beings and other creatures. What is it that determines their health? It's actually the breath that passes through our nadis, the blood vessels, and respiration produces vibrations. So those who keep their breathing under control through the practice of yoga and such methods, they are healthy to an amazing degree. So just as the breath is vital to the body, it's also to the mind. The mind is the source of the thinking and the vital pranic energy, as you call it. So you may test it yourself. For example, when you breathe, you are at peace before the sanctum in a temple, and how you breathe is also quickened. If you're angry, suddenly you get something which is upsetting you, then your breathing also becomes fast. So the happiness you experience when you take part in something divine, listening to even Vedas, like a bhajan or a musical discourse, is different from the pleasure that you get maybe in some parties or elsewhere. So speech contains vibrations of many kinds. And science tells us that there is sound outside the range of human hearing. There are sounds that are converted into electric waves that we cannot hear. Like you see a television or listen to the radio or listen to your cell phone. Those are sound waves coming in, but you can't see them. They're converted into an audible range. Likewise, the sages heard certain sounds which we cannot hear, but they could perceive it by special powers. And these powers are all described in detail, how they come and how the Vedas were heard by those divine rishis. There are 4 forms of sound, and these are called para, pashyanti, madhyama, vaikari. These are 4 forms of sound. The sound that we normally hear is vaikari. Its source is within. It's called para. And this originates, vaikari is from our lips when we talk. And para is a sound which is present in Mooladhara, that is below the navel. So before it is transmitted through the mouth, it passes through 2 stages in between, called Pashyanti and Madhyama. Now, it's only when we go higher on the path of yogic practices that we are able to hear the sounds of Pashyanti and Madhyama and Para, which are down below. But here, our masters of yoga, they could see it, and they were able to hear the sounds. And it is also said here that such sounds please the deities and create good to the world and bring Atmika. So it is begun from right from Mooladhara, it comes up to In fact, in Lalita Sahasranama, there is a stotram which reveals this. It reads, Para pratyakchiti rupa pasyanti paradevata madhyama vaikari rupa bhakta manasahamsika. Says in Lalita Sahasranamam that Devi is present in all the four forms. That is why when you speak, you should speak nicely, because it's just like a divine voice. Therefore, the uplift or Atmic uplift coming from the Mooladhara right up to your lips is passing through these stages. And you find in many of these yajnams where Vedas, mantras are recited, the people really make the effort to pull up the mantra, and it's kind of guttural. You can see the voice coming in. And since these Vedic mantras have to be brought from the navel side, the practice of Vedic chanting is mostly restricted to men. It is not recommended for ladies, as it may interfere with their biological functions. That's the reason why ladies do not chant the Vedic chants. It's men who do that most of the yajnams. So the mantras are the sounds that have the power to inspire good thoughts in people. It gives you those kind of, shall I say, a little thrust, which makes you think, and then they pleases your nadis, and the vibrations are not only the purpose only for the creation, but the conduct of life itself. They are indeed Vedic mantras that help us to the go through what they call the ocean of samsara and become one with the ultimate truth. So that is the importance of sound and vibrations in Vedic mantras. So having said that, let's see if there is a very exhaustive coverage of Vedas. Is there any common ground? Yes, of course. There is unity in diversity. There are four Vedas, and we said Angas and Upangas, and quite a large. It is impossible for one person to master all these, and they all talk about in different areas. It seems that they are, each one is covering a vast area. But is there a common ground? And the answer is yes. The Vedas are diverse, but then there is a common ground between them. We had talked about some of them earlier, and one of them, first one, is a belief in one Brahman, the supreme being. So Sanatana Dharma is monotheistic, even though it appears in different forms and provides different routes for attaining salvation. So it is also adherence to many things like that truth, dharma, and karma. The common belief in all these diverse areas is that Vedas are the pramanam. Or pramanam means authority. It is the final authority. Vedas provide the final answers, or they are the ultimate authority. And it serves to a large extent the definition of a Hindu, even though the Vedas are interpreted slightly differently by different people, but these are common ground which makes them adhere to the scriptures of Vedas. Well, one is truth is one, but it is described differently. Vipraha Bahuta Vadanti, we mentioned it in the last class. So truth is one, that is again a common ground. And respect for the five natural elements, have the earth, the fire, and the wind, and the akasham. These five different elements are there, and there is respect shown for all the five natural elements by all these diverse Vedas. So they worship them just as any other deity. And it also has a code of conduct, which is dharma and karma. They also are common, and the shastras are there to prove that. So Hindus do believe in these common grounds. Sanatana Dharma has unity in diversity. Probably the name university, which is now very common, places of education, it comes from this unity in diversity. If you take uni and versity, it becomes university. So unity in diversity seems to be something which is common. So this is where I think we would like to conclude with a prayer, and because there is a lot more to talk about in the next session. So I'd like to conclude this session with a prayer, a well-known prayer. Asato ma sadgamaya
Tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma amritamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
This is the beautiful prayer. Says Asatoma Sadgamaya. You know, Sat means that truth, but Asat is just the opposite of that. In Sanskrit, you put A before, it becomes opposite. You can say untruth or unreality. From unreality, let me go to truth. The second one says Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya. Tamas is darkness. Lead me into light. From darkness, lead me into light, or get me enlightened, is another way of saying it. We all want to get enlightened. And finally, Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya, from mortality to immortality. Immortality meaning you understand yourself, you go to reach the Paramatma, from Jivatma to Paramatma. So this is a beautiful prayer which wishes peace 3 times, Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi, and taken out from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. It's one of the large, Brihat means large. It's a very large Upanishad, and from that this prayer is taken. So today what we have done is I've just given you a quick overview of Vedas, which are a storehouse of knowledge. And we talked about knowledge last time. Therefore, we are expanding it into where from knowledge and why Vedas, why should we follow them, and what is the connection between sound and vibrations in Vedas, how does it benefit people? So that is what we covered in today's session number 3. Please stay tuned for the next session, which will probably, which will be next Sunday, 5 p.m. CST. Any questions, you can email to me, or you can contact Sri Sampath Iyengar. We'll be happy to answer them. In fact, I mentioned that the Vedas, the Sanatana Dharma encourage you to ask questions, and please do ask questions, and please tell us your comments so that we can tune the programs for future as we wanted them. Thank you very much, and namaskaram.
Hello, devotees. As usual, Professor Subramaniam did an outstanding job. I would see the Vedas, or as he said, it is a kind of an ocean, you know, including the Triparkadal. It's such big it is. I think the Earth's surface, almost 70% is covered with water, you know, with the seas and oceans and whatnot, you know. And I will be failing in my duty if I don't bring an analogy. As you know, the Indian Ocean or Pacifics and all, its hidden treasures are there. You know, in oysters, you have got beautiful pearls hidden. And the divers dive deep into the sea and bring in those things for you to wear, you know, and you enjoy it. Similarly, you know, that when the ocean of Vedas, Professor Subramaniam, as a diver, he dived deep into it and then brought in the hidden treasures the gems and diamonds and that one in the Vedas where they're hidden, is trying to bring into to you to appreciate it. He brought in, today's world, we live on materialism and the focus on science and inventions and whatnot. My memory goes back, to my earlier years when my parents used to tell me the story of Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great, at a young age, he had very high ambition. He thought of conquering the whole world. He went in one place to another and all, everywhere he succeeded. And he went to India, then he saw all those philosophers and all the things. Of course, there he met with a little bit of failure and he retreated back. Somewhere in Middle East, he came in and he fell sick. And then he was almost about to die. What he said was, when I die, please bury me with my two palms wide open outside, above the grounds. The meaning is, he conquered the world, all the materialism, everything all the best of things he conquered, What has he achieved ultimately, He didn't take anything with him, his palm was pretty much empty, that's what it is. And everything, all those materialism, science and everything is all only means to an end. It is not an end in itself. What is the end? That one, that is what a big question. That's where the philosophy comes in. That's where the Vedas comes in. That's where every aspect of life comes in for people to ponder over, what it is. And everything appears to be just a passing cloud, What is permanent is only it is shanti, peace, and kind of an immortality to be achieved, whatever it is, at the heaven or that one. Ultimate peace, that's what it is. And so again, so much treasure is still there, and Subramanian, Professor Subramaniam will be probably diving deeper into it and bring in all the treasures to us to enjoy. All these lectures are all there, in Chicago Kalibari, that one, as well as in YouTube. They'll be there for a long, long time. Take time to, if you couldn't listen it live or anything, please do visit those sites and then take your time to listen to them. They are all a very, very valuable thing. And he has put in so much labor to bring in, all these things into a concise slideshow. And again, I appreciate both Mrs. Vidya and Professor Subramaniam for that. Then thank you again, listeners. And come again, next Sunday, we will have the session at 5 o'clock, Thank you again. With that, I conclude.
Namaskaram to all.